Ed Miliband, you told us yesterday you were going to talk about the man, you. And yet we've worked out that 15 of the 20 years that you've been in work were spent very close to one man who subsequently became Prime Minister. And he, poor chap, didn't get a look in.
Gordon Brown.
You've said it.
I learned a lot from him, and I learned a lot from working with him. And I suppose yesterday what I was trying to do was explain what motivated me, what took me into the world of politics. Because I think lots of people today think, you know, why are politicians in it? Are they in it for themselves? Are they in it for the glory? And I wanted to try and explain, at least to the best of my ability from my point of view, why I'm in it. And that was a lot more to do.
You left him out.
Well, that was a lot more to do with my family background, because I sort of was already in politics, obviously, when I was working for him. A lot to do with my family background, my experiences, and that's really what I was trying to talk about.
You said that the cornerstone of one nation, Britain, would be a one nation banking system for a start. One nation banking system in a globalised world is a pretty tricky deal. Now, you didn't commit yourself absolutely to the separation of retail and casino banking. Are you committed to that separation?
I'm saying to the banks, if you don't implement the spirit and principle of Vickers to the full, a hard separation between investment banks, casino banking, and the high street bank, the next Labour government will, by law, break them up. It's a drastic step. So, you know, if there's another way of getting there, fine. But if there isn't, I'm very clear about this, then we will have to implement the full breakup of the banks. The commitment is very clear, and I can be held to account for that commitment.
And are you going to oppose the watering down that does exist so far?
Of course.
In the promised white paper and the rest?
Totally. I mean, we will not only oppose the watering down, but we want further clarification. For example, that we need to have separate chief executives and boards of each part of the bank, so there's a hard separation between them, not staff just going from one place to another. If the banks are really going to deliver on this without a full breakup by law, they've got to go quite a long way.
Well, it's much easier to be tough on banking than to be candid on the real pain that the electorate is likely to face in the coming 2 years. You referred to it, but you weren't really prepared to spell out that there will be hospital closures, that there will be welfare cuts, and there will be tax rises. These are realities.
We're going to look at the situation we inherit, and I think that's the...
No, but you know those things are going to be there.
Well, we're going to look at the situation we inherit come the next election, but at the moment, when we don't know what George Osborne is going to be saying in 2 months' time, frankly, about whether he's meeting his fiscal rules, what is going to be happening to spending, what is happening to the economy, what is my obligation? Show how we can get out of the economic crisis now, which I think we've shown this week, but also to send a very clear message to my party and to the country that the idea the Labour government can get back in and turn back on the spending taps is just totally wrong.
Those tough choices will involve all that I spelt out there. Hospital closures, NHS difficulties of all sorts.
Well, as I said,
welfare cuts,
I couldn't have been clearer that there will be tough settlements in our public services, and it will make life harder for those who use them and harder for those who work in them.
Will there be any hospital closures during a Labour government, should it come to power after this one?
Of course I can't promise there won't be hospital closures, of course not. And then some services get changed. And that happened under the last Labour government. If there's a medical need for them, then that will happen. That's clear.
But can you really pledge, as you did yesterday, to tear up what will then be an NHS Act of complete reform in the NHS? Well, that will be a vastly costly business.
Well, that's not going to happen. What is going to happen is that we are going to repeal the bill. Why? Because it puts the wrong principles at the heart of the NHS. Because it says to hospitals, you should be competing against other hospitals as a central defining principle of the way this health service works.
And we're going to change that down the line.
No, but I don't believe you can't.
It will be a massive undertaking.
You can definitely change that.
Poor old NHS, yet another period of uncertainty.
No, it's not uncertainty. It's clarity about the kind of principles we want informing our NHS.
Well, no mention of Europe, for example. Now, that's a boring topic, but it's something which has us in awful trouble because of the effect that it's having on the pound and the rest of it. Can you pledge, for example, that there won't be a knee-jerk referendum on our membership of Europe in the next Labour government?
Well, I'm very clear that the priority now is not to have a referendum. The priority is to sort out the economic problems that we face.
You will oppose a referendum.
Well, I'm very clear about our position, which is that we're not in favour of a referendum at this stage.
But will you oppose a referendum?
Well, it depends under what circumstances, but I'm clear at the moment that the priority for Britain is not to have a referendum.
There's one more question that inevitably dogs your leadership, and that is your brother. Now, when you first became leader, you said it would
I'm
be
not sure I agree with the premise of your question, but be that as it may.
Well, people want to know what happens on that score. When you first became leader, you said it would be fantastic to have him working with me in the cabinet.
Still would be.
No change.
No change, but he's not changed his position, which is that he's happy doing what he's doing. He's a huge asset to the Labour Party, on the front bench or off the front bench. You know, we'll see where we go on that. You know, his position hasn't changed. He's clear. He doesn't want to come back into the shadow cabinet, and I totally respect that decision. And he's making a big difference to the party in a whole range of other ways.